Okay, we're going to start. And this is the beauty of Zoom, the beauty of 2022, that we're able to record programs. People can watch, come in as they want. So let me just, okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Reva Judas, the founder and director of Nechama Comfort. And tonight I am so excited to welcome to our comfort conversation, Kiley, Hanish. I'm going to tell you a little bit how I first heard of Kiley, met Kiley, and how we became instant friends. I can't believe how long ago already. It's about 10 years, I think, already. Unbelievable. So one night I was watching Lifetime movies, and that was before, we had all these channels. So Lifetime was really the go-to when you wanted to just, I was washing my dishes. I needed something just to have in the background. It was Saturday night, and I turned on Lifetime for what I thought was another rom-com, another romance, when all of a sudden I see a movie that's called Return to Zero, and it had Minnie Driver and Paul Edelman, nice stars. And I start watching, and in the background, I hear the word stillbirth. I hear comments and scenes being portrayed that sound so familiar to me. So I stop washing the dishes and I watch it. And the beauty of Lifetime was that you could watch it for the next 6 hours. They kept replaying it. I was mesmerized because I had not seen an entire movie ever in those days produced about the story of a couple having a stillborn. And not only was it being shown, but it was so true. The scenes were so true and were being portrayed, and the emotions and the conflicts and the entire family, grandparents, co-workers, so many people that were involved. This was the story. This was my story, what I had gone through with the loss of my son. And this was the story of people that I had begun speaking with when I had started the organization, not long before I saw the movie. Right away the next day, I Googled Kiley and connected with her, and we spoke. And as luck has it, or as I say, there are no coincidences, I was traveling to California in the next couple months, and we met. And it was amazing. It was just as if we shared this bond. I couldn't stop believing that there was a woman out there like myself, because you have to remember, even though there was internet and cell phones, it wasn't talked about, because stillbirth, pregnancy, and infant loss was not being talked about. And a movie on Lifetime, well, we had made it. So after speaking with Kiley for a while, we both were discussing our stories, what we were doing to help others, and our hopes and dreams to help the community of families. So tonight, I've invited Kiley for you to hear her story, for you to hear her journey, her loss, and how she put her son Norbert into her life and have moved through it. The wonderful organization. She is the founder of Return to Zero Hope. We were honored to have Kiley at our awareness Memorial Nechama Comfort event in December 2019, right before COVID hit. She was able to fly from California to New York, and we hope soon to have her come again. And if not, this is the next best thing, to have her here. And we'll talk a little bit also about, we'll talk a little bit what's going on in the world in terms of getting rid of the shame, how we can share our stories. And we invite all of you to share your comments and your questions. You can wait till after we present, or you can write it in the chat. And for those of you who are not watching us live, we will give you our contact information at the end of the event as well. So we continue our conversation and our talk. So welcome, Kiley, to our comfort conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I got to see you the other day over Zoom, and it's not the same as being in person, but it's just so nice to see people's faces and connect. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I didn't tell people where are you located?
I live in Los Angeles, California. Actually like up against the mountain, so I'm not smack in the middle. I have 3 chickens and 2 cats. So I try to live a somewhat little bit of a farm. I mean, not really, but a little bit. It's fun.
Right. And you have 2 children.
I have 2 children in addition.
2 living children, right?
2 living children.
So I want, I've just given a tidbit of your story, and we did send out information about how to watch the movie on Amazon. I remember the first time we talked, we had to get permission in a movie theater. So we're excited that we could share it. So if you haven't watched the movie, we're going to share that information as well. But I wanted to ask you to share your story about your son, about your life.
Sure. It's been a while, right? So I feel there's so many different stages in the journey, but I'll just start with the beginning. And my son Norbert was my first child, and the pregnancy was pretty normal. Like, I mean, of course, there was some, anxiety because it's your first child and you don't know what to expect, but everything was normal. And I was like 35 weeks pregnant, and I started bleeding. And then I went into labor, and it was over the weekend. So I just thought, well, I was like, I must be having my baby early. Like, I didn't really think anything of it. He had stopped moving, but as a first pregnancy, I didn't know that. I wasn't told to be aware of movement, to count the kicks, things that now we know are so important, but I was not told about that. And so when I went into the doctor thinking I was just going to have a baby early, then I learned the news that his heart had stopped beating. He had already died. And I went immediately into shock, and like so many of us do. And just the next couple of days was, looking back, was very difficult. I mean, difficult, of course, because, your baby that you expect to be born has died. And then you're like, what comes next? And there was very little guidance from anybody, from the doctor, from the hospital staff. Nobody told me anything, what to expect, what to do, what was helpful. And we were able to spend a little bit of time with him, about an hour. I wish it was more. I mean, now hearing people, the amount of time that some people are able to spend with their babies, I have a lot of regret around that, but trying to give myself grace that I did the best that I could with the information that I had at the time. So
I don't think you were offered that. You were not offered.
no, I wasn't offered,
the
but
hospital, they didn't know, right?
No. So, and I felt like the immediate support from family and friends was really strong, but it went away quite quickly. And you're left feeling you are not able to move forward. And just again, with no direction, no community, is very isolated. And it was really hard. I mean, of course it was really hard, but you just you've been through a traumatic event, which you don't even know that you have been. And you have postpartum, and it's like everything is all haywire and no one's and I sought out a lot of help over the years, and just not seeing the right people who are educated in perinatal loss, and that was hard. And so I had my daughter, so this was in 2005. So Norbert this year will be 17, which I cannot believe. It's crazy.
Wow. Wow.
I had a daughter about 14 months later, and then in the whole pregnancy after loss, which I know we were talking about a little bit, is another crazy experience. And back then it wasn't talked about at all. I had an OB who had a stillbirth and had been through a pregnancy after loss, and that was helpful. But there was a lot of intentional non-attachment to my daughter. I didn't want to know what gender I wanted to do everything different because I was so afraid that she would die too, even though it was very unlikely, but you don't know.
Did you know, did they give you any reason why?
Yeah,
Robert had passed away? Was there any?
So he ended up having a liver cyst that was not there during the 20-week anatomy scan. It developed later and then it burst. And so whatever the fluid was inside killed him. Some really random thing.
Right. So that's interesting that, because I think a general statistic is that really only 50% of the time do you get information of exactly why. So they were able to tell you why, but it helps, but it doesn't help because it was a random thing. It wasn't a genetic or anything that you could prevent.
Yes.
Did you stay with the same doctor that you had with Norbert? Because that's always a question.
I did not stay with the same doctor.
Right.
I actually had a midwife, and then I went to the backup doctor because he was early. And I didn't go back to either of them. No.
Mm-hmm. Did you use a midwife for your daughter, or no? You went to a different doctor.
I went to a different OB, and that was the one who had the stillbirth. So I used her for the next two children.
Right.
And we didn't do anything crazy like I wasn't super high risk, but it was just like a lot of extra monitoring and ultrasounds, and then also the offer of like, you can come in whenever you want to come in. Like she understood the emotional journey of it and that there would be a lot of anxiety. And so it was like, whenever you want to come in and hear the heartbeat, you can do that. Did
you go in a while?
I didn't go in, but the one thing I did do though is I never went to any appointment alone because I didn't want to. I was alone when I found out that he had passed away, and so I didn't want to be alone if something bad happened.
Right. So you had support with Sean, with other family members that they came with you. So it's interesting because again, I think that, I continued with the same doctor, but I didn't even know if there was choices or not because mine happened 35 years ago, which I can't believe in April. But it is interesting when we share the information with people, with clients, and for the extended family to understand that it's a choice about choosing the doctor and when you want to get pregnant. We always tell family members and friends, follow the lead of the couple. Don't give them medical or legal advice. Follow their lead medically of what they choose to do. And we always tell the clients, the families, make sure you're comfortable with the doctor. And I think that probably helped for you to go on and to continue. Going back to the loss a little bit, was You know, we saw it on the movie, and I think you told me most of the film is very true to the story when we met.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like everything pertaining to the baby is
Right. I
very,
remember you told me that, right.
yeah.
The other things were just dramatic effects,
Some-
lifetime. And I always tell people that when they watch it. But everything pertains. So I remember this with the I think it was Thanksgiving they have in the film where you had the family, you had, I think it was one parent from Sean and one parent from you, and you were at the table, and you could really see the different comments and the different ways people were handling that. And I know that's always a big question with people and when we get questions from the grandparents and the extended family. And grandparents are so young now, you know, it's not some old grandma and grandpa somewhere. Um, how they can help, you know, we tell the clients, this is what you need to share with your family. And I think that's important too. And I think it was so well portrayed. But I also tell families, and I wanted to know if you agree, you know, the way your family is the way they're going to react to your loss, whatever the relationship is. Um, you know, did you feel it was your new normal? Did you feel that you had changed, but your family was still your family?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. I mean, I think also what's important to remember is they're uncomfortable,
Mhm.
right? People are uncomfortable. No one in our society is knows how to deal with death, especially the death of the baby.
Right.
And then the other thing is they're grieving as well.
Yes.
Like not as like the grieving parent, you don't really care. You're like, I'm hurting the most. I don't care if they're grieving, but we have to remember that they are grieving also, and that people, they're going through their own thing. It's hard. And I think that people, family and friends need guidance on what to do, how they can help, because they haven't been through this before. They don't know what to do.
Right, right. That's why, well, we're gonna get to your work in a second. But that is, you know, that's what we're trying to show, that it's not just, yes, like you said, it is the couple who've lost the baby, but it affects so many other family members and children, future children, if you have to, you know, how to really, you know, the goal is how are you going to grieve your child and I think by society recognizing that, and how are you going to put it into your life so you can move through it? And you know, you're an example, and other people are examples of how you give hope. You know, your organization is Return to Zero Hope. So after the loss, and you know, and what I'm about to say, people shouldn't take for granted. You were able to spend time with your baby. You gave your baby a name, and you had a funeral, or you had something to
Yeah,
acknowledge the loss, a
we did,
memorial,
we did like a memorial,
right?
like a month or
Mhm.
4 to 6 weeks later.
Right. So you were able to do all that, and at the time, what was your career at the time? It wasn't anything like this. You right, you were on the faculty of,
Well, I think when I had Norbert, I was helping Sean with his business.
right,
Um, and then I'm an occupational therapist. So then after this, kind of when I started to pull my life together, I went back and I worked at USC, on faculty in the occupational therapy department.
and so when you said you pulled your life together, how long was that? You know, people like to have dates and numbers.
Well, I was about 6 months in shock, non-functional. And about the 6 month mark, I'm like, okay, I just had this, like something changed. And I was like, okay, I have to get out of bed now, and I'm gonna do something. I was not normal functioning at that point, but at least I was functioning not in bed.
It's so important that you share that with everybody who's going to listen to this, because they want to know, it's already been 6 months, and I sort of tell them it's only been 6 months. And everybody's journey is different, and everybody's path is different. Before COVID, we used to say, did you get out of bed? Did you take a shower? Did you get dressed? During COVID, we had to change. Are you with your sweat? Did you change your sweats? But really, people need to give themselves that time too. And so tell us now. So you were working as an OT. You were on the faculty of USC. I think that's when I met you. And where did where did the idea of the movie, of the book? I want to share the book also. Besides, Return to Zero, there was a wonderful book that Kiley's going to hold up. So it's called 3-1. And we're going to tell you how to get a copy of that. It's just, I ate it up because there weren't, now there's more literature, but not as much as there should be, but it's amazing. So tell me, when you picked yourself up 6 months, how did you go from that to the movie, the book, etc.?
Well, it was a long time. I think it was 7 years before
Right.
Sean started to write the script of the film. For him, he's a filmmaker, and this was his way to process his grief. And so he was like, I need to do this. I said, okay. I was pregnant with my third baby. But I just want to say something about that. Like, I waited 5 years between my second pregnancy and my third pregnancy because emotionally, I just couldn't do it. I was like, I'm not ready. And then there became a time where I was like, oh, they're going to be so far apart in age. I have to do this if I'm going to do it. But I waited a long time. So I was pregnant with my littlest one when Sean was writing the script and casting and that whole thing. And then the baby was born. And then I think he was 6 months old when Sean was shooting, he was shooting 9 years after our loss. So it had been, or the movie came out 9 years after. It's a long time, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the book came out also in 2014, the same time as the film. They were launched at the same time. And I think that's important also to tell people that people may want to do things, right? As a result of what they've been through and help other people, but you don't have to do it in the first year. You can do things on your own timeline. And I wasn't ready. And then I held my first retreat also in 2014. So it had been a long, long time, and we hadn't been involved in the baby loss community at all. We didn't even know that it existed. And so with the film, there was kind of in being introduced to that community, and it was really amazing to hear other people's stories and feel like you're not the only one that this has happened to. It was very comforting.
Did you go to any support groups, or did anything exist?
The only thing that existed was a compassionate friends, but not specific for pregnancy loss. And I was like, I'm not going to something where there's adult children dying. It's not the same thing.
Wow. So my husband and I had the exact same experience in 1986. So to hear that you had that experience in 2005, 20 years later, it's just unbelievable. There's no word. It's to me, I would use the word horror. We were told to go to Compassionate Friends, and you were living in Los Angeles.
Yeah. And even now, there's nothing in the area where I was, the southern part of Los Angeles. There's still no support groups down there. So it's
That's
which
why
was
we're
why,
here tonight.
well, like also the beauty of, I feel with COVID and the ability to reach people living
Yeah.
who, no matter where they live, with virtual support groups. I know you're doing that and we're doing that. So
Right, and that's amazing, amazing. So, and I like the point that you said about that you, so your child, right after Norbert, your daughter, that happened quickly. That happened quickly because that's a lot of couples express that they want to have another baby. They want, for many reasons.
well, she was not planned.
Uh-huh.
And I actually felt like I was just coming out of my shock. I was like maybe a month or so feeling like, okay, trying to get my feet on the ground. I found
Right.
out I was pregnant, and then you can't grieve. Like you have to put the grieving aside to focus
Right.
on being pregnant and all that anxiety. And then when she was born and she was here, like relief, but then also all the grief that you haven't dealt with comes back in. So it's complicated. Like,
It is complicated, and people, um, yeah, because I got pregnant also. My son and my oldest daughter are a year and 2 days apart. So it is an interesting, and that's a lot that people, people will say, especially if it's a miscarriage. Again, your story was he was born stillbirth. My son lived for 12 hours, but I also had 6 miscarriages, so really we're talking about any pregnancy, loss, infant, SIDS that the couple is feeling. And the attachment, as we had said, is starting so much earlier. So, you're going to hear comments, oh, just have another baby and things, but there's so much emotion to that. And that it's always there. So I think what you're trying to do, what we try to do with the work of others is to recognize it and let's deal with it. So the movie comes out, the book comes out, and it changed my life and anybody that I spoke to about it, but it still wasn't, I think were you nominated for Emmys, or there was something?
yeah, Minnie was nominated for an Emmy.
Right, right. So it was out there. I thought, oh, now it's gonna just flourish. And it's interesting because I like to watch TV. I do, and movies, and that's sort of I think was that's how I dealt with my losses, because there was no support group. There wasn't even cable when I had my first loss. I'm always focused if I hear stories or TV shows or books written, but it didn't happen so quickly. It's still, now I can say there are more than, and I get, like, just today, I woke up, there's texts, Facebooks, Savannah Guthrie on the Today Show talks about her miscarriage in this month's Good Housekeeping, so we hear about, but then tomorrow it'll be, something else. So it's interesting. So I want to ask you now about, you mentioned your retreat, and I know that's how you started. How did you get the idea for Return to Zero Hope? How it started? What gave you that passion, that drive to do it after the movie and the book, or at the same time, and what you're doing now?
I mean, it has grown a lot. I think in the beginning, there was the desire to get people together, like to create the community piece, because it's such an isolating experience. So that's where it started. And just while you're there, like, to know that there is, feel like it's a very spiritual experience, because it's like I'm there creating the space, me or with somebody else, but then at the same time there is a greater power helping these women to connect to each other, to move, to like go deep in their grief, but allow it to be moved. and to see transformation, because where they come in and like where they are emotionally when they come in and where they leave, they're different people really, because they feel seen and heard, and they're not like the weird one, you know, like that we can talk about our babies, we can share pictures, we can tell their stories and do some deep work on things that maybe we don't talk about with other people or don't have the opportunity. So it's very special.
So you started with the retreats first. That was the
I
first
started
thing.
with the retreats,
You
and
want
then
to tell people a little bit and quickly
about the
what is
retreat.
about the retreat? What is
Yeah,
it?
so I like we really view grieving and healing as holistic experiences, like they affect all of you as a person. And so that's how we approach the retreat. So they're weekend retreats, like a Thursday through a Sunday. And we have an agenda, but in the agenda, it's a combination of different things. So there's some kind of movement, whether it be yoga or dance. There is group circles where we incorporate like rituals of candle lighting and saying the baby's names out loud, and then talking about certain topics and then breaking up into smaller groups. I would say average size is about 20 people.
Wow. And it's just women for now.
Just women, yeah.
Right.
And then, you know, bringing in journaling, bringing in crafts, and then allowing for free time for just because it's heavy and you might need a nap or to be by yourself or something like that. We like to make everything, you know, optional, but it's structured in a way that you don't have to think about what you're doing, that you can just like come there. You're usually it's in some place that's in the middle of nowhere. So in nature, really beautiful, out of your routine. And you can just kind of go along with whatever we have planned, and whether you want to do it, or maybe you need to sleep for the day, and that's okay too. And then just like meal times are also great times for connection,
Right.
in a non-structured way. So I think the biggest part of the retreat is the community piece. And then there is learning, but it's the community piece. It's having time set aside to connect with your child that we probably don't do, you know, like in the beginning, you do that.
Right.
And you connect through the pain, you know, but then when the pain starts going away, like how do we try to teach ways to positively connect to your child? Like it doesn't only have to be through the pain.
Right. Right.
So that's how the retreat started. And I did those for about 4 years. And I guess, where do I go? I've been,
I just want to say something about the retreat. So it's interesting that when I first met you, I'm living in New Jersey, and I come out to California, and my parents are living there now, which was new. My brother was in, and I'm hearing these things, and I'm like, that sounds so nice, but it's like, it's very California. Like nobody's gonna do that stuff, and what's interesting, I mean, I was always excited about it, and I haven't been able to come to a retreat yet, but we'll talk about those in the future. But I remember thinking and talking about it, and I think that the last few years with COVID, that the words that you've been using and I've been using, and what you've self-care and meditation and all these things that you were talking about 10 years ago are so accepted now. And breathing, I mean, how many more apps could there be? And I hope that people, both men and women, are embracing this and are going to do this more. And I think that it's so important. I think that you were in the forefront about this, that it's really, and your mental health affects your physical health. And loss and grief is difficult. And I think, as I told you, my mother passed away suddenly last year, and I would always talk the talk that the loss of a baby, it's grief, the loss of a parent. And unfortunately, I can say it's true and it has to be recognized. Um, and these retreats, we wish we could all be on, and we hope we will. But hopefully in the future too, we'll be able to share some just quick things that people could do every day to embrace, journaling. Who would have, you told me that 10 years ago, and now there are journals you can buy, for loss of grief and things, even at the dollar store, which is amazing. So your work really was at the forefront, and it's amazing what you do. And that's really what you focused on, just the women and the retreats. And then how did that follow?
And then, so that was 2014. In 2018, I decided, I was like, I need to become a nonprofit in order to get donations, in order to run programs and offer scholarships and things like that. So that's a whole process, as you know.
Oh, yes.
But I think, the retreats were the main thing. But then the providers are also something that I care about, educating providers. And this is because my experience was not the greatest experience.
And providers, you mean by
I mean, like
doctors,
people,
therapists?
yeah, like people who work with parents, whether it be like in the moments of the loss or afterward. So they're aware of how do you support parents going through this? Because if you do the wrong things, you can add to the trauma that the parents are experiencing.
Right.
And I feel
Exactly.
you mentioned like meditation, like I feel that Return to Zero Hope is very focused on the mental health piece, the trauma-informed care, understanding that pregnancy and infant loss is often a traumatic event, and that is stored physically, emotionally too, but physically in your body. There are changes that happen in your body and your brain. And how do we incorporate mindfulness and somatic practices into the work we're doing, even if it's through a virtual support group? But with providers, like just resources we have for them is we have brochures that can go in doctors' offices and hospitals and therapist office, for all different types of situations, I would say, right? There's a brochure for fathers, there's a brochure for ending unwanted pregnancy, there's a brochure for sibling, there's maybe like 12 of them. And then during the pandemic, we launched a lot of online webinars, so that we have a large webinar library, and we continue to do that, which is for the providers, education. For the parents, it's like validation and education for them as well.
Right.
And then virtual support groups have that we had to pivot to that because we had to cancel our retreats, and then which have been amazing, and also reaching people no matter where you live, being able to participate, and then also having different groups for different situations. So we have like a recurrent loss group, we have pregnancy and infant loss, of course, we have ending unwanted pregnancy, parenting after loss, pregnancy after loss. We have a grandmother's monthly group.
Yeah, we're going to be hopefully connecting with the comfort with the grandmothers. Wow, I'm listening how we first met and all the wonderful things that you're doing. And I think because of having things virtual, we're global now, we're around the world, we're helping. And what's amazing is when we can connect the different organizations with the different focuses, our goal is to really help each other, to help the community of families with losses, so that no one should feel alone. And I think that's such an important thing to remember. And that being said, I wanted to just to mention that Kiley and I are on a committee that sort of just organically came, that there is a bipartisan bill that was presented into the House of Representatives, the Stillbirth Health Improvement and Education for Autumn Act. And you'll be able to read more about it on Return to Zero Hope website and on my website as soon as things, the Chama Comfort's website, as soon as it becomes public. I've had the privilege to meet Debbie Hain, who was one of the initiators. She was like one of us, mother of a baby born still and a loss. Together we were on a committee in the state of New Jersey. We were both lay people, as they told us, amongst doctors and social workers, chaplains, nurses, and we were educating them. And she was able to put into a bill in New Jersey, because I think she felt like you felt, like I felt. And it still amazed me that it was 20 years from my loss to your loss to Debbie's loss, and it was the same protocol about how families are treated after the pregnancy infant loss. And it was just simple protocols, and everybody says, well, that should be easy enough, but it's not. It's not still. It's better, and I will tell everybody, and I tell my families, it's better than it was, but it's important to recognize this. So we're excited because it was a bipartisan, and it was passed with an overwhelming majority in the House of Representatives on December 8th. And they're going to be beginning to prepare to bring it to the Senate. And it's, for people watching, it's not, it will increase stillbirth education and awareness and research. Because the statistics, and I'm going to read this, 23,500 babies are born stillborn each year still in the United States. And that's in 2022. And this is a fact, it's still unbelievable. In the US, the annual number of stillbirths far exceeds the number of deaths among children between the ages of 0 and 14, including gun accidents and fire and death. So, you're shaking your head. I hope everybody watching this is shaking their head. So we need the research, we need the funding. And for all families dealing with any type of pregnancy, infant, toddler death, that will just open up the floodgates for more funding and more research. Maternal health, it will be out there. And people, I talk about this a lot. This is what I do. And they're like, well, of course it's going to be passed. Of course, why wouldn't they give funding for that? But, we're not a political organization, neither are you, but we do know. So eventually you'll be getting information about how to reach out to your senators and everything. But we were on this call with about 6 other organizations yesterday. And there's hope. I love your name, Return to Zero Hope, because I really think, Nechama comfort means, Nechama is the Hebrew word for comfort. So we're trying to give comfort, you're giving hope. And I think that's what's so important, to give these families. And just to listening to your story, I wrote down something you had said in the beginning, that you gave yourself grace. And I love that comment. I love how you put that. Giving yourself the grace, the permission. And I'm honored to call you my friend. And we had said we haven't seen each other, but we hope. And to work together in this community. Stay tuned to Return to Zero Hope website and to the Chama Comfort website for some more programming. We're going to be working with men. We're going to be working much more, programming together to be able to help families never to feel alone. And I hope that we can give you hope and comfort for the families that are going through this now, families that it happened to so many years ago, that it's never too late. I know there are families going to be watching this that have recently contacted me. Their losses were 50 years ago. It's never too late to mourn, to grieve, to remember all of our children that now live in our hopes and dreams. So I thank you, Kiley, for being here today, for the beauty of Zooming, and really looking forward to hopefully the joint retreats. We're looking for, I told you that when with some of our community, we need to have kosher food, so that'll be a whole other thing, but we'll have fun creating that as well. So I wanted to recognize Michelle. If you want to turn on your camera, Michelle Lowenstein for doing all of our tech, letting people in, recording it. And Michelle, just for 1 second, I just want to share Michelle and her family had a loss and was a client and is now was a trained case manager for Nechama Comfort as well. So, and I want to thank everybody else for joining today. If you have any questions or comments, if you want to turn on your camera and share anything, you want to write it in the chat, we welcome that as well. Kiley, can you put in the chat your information, your website, and how we can contact you too? And when, and also, do you have the link for the movie? I don't have it with me at this time, or you could just go on Amazon, right?
Yeah, I can, let me get a link.
Okay, so to the movie, to watch the movie, if you're ready, you know, I was telling some of our clients, the beauty of Amazon now, you could turn it off and turn it on. And the book, can we order the book on Amazon as well? Yeah, you can order the book, an amazing book. If you're local, New Jersey, in Teaneck, I still have some copies. But they're both just amazing, amazing.
I would say for people who are afraid to watch the movie, that first of all, you can skip over any part that any
Right.
scene you're
That's
like,
the beauty of it now.
skip over it.
Right.
But just from the feedback that we've received from so many people who have watched it, who've had losses, is they just felt very validated and not alone. So I don't think it's something to be very overly scared of.
No.
And you, if it's like too much, you skip over it or you turn it off.
It is such, and I don't think there's been a movie made since. There's been some movies about the topic. And I know, you know, on certain shows, they'll show it much more. There's more medical shows that have that episode of that as well. But it really covers so many people that told me it's really so true, the whole family dynamics and everything. And it is hope at the end. It is hope. And oh, people want to borrow the book. Okay, yes. Yes, I will. I have the book, yes. But we will share. And I hope to do more conversations. This is really great.
It's been lovely to be here to talk with you. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to email me. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Reva, for just the important work that you're doing.
Thank you, Kiley. And I remember, I'm really, my head's going back to meeting at the coffee shop, the Coffee Bean, and you know, 10 years ago. And I just hope that this helps people not to feel alone, because you're not alone. So good evening to you. I know it's earlier for you in California. And for those watching this on our websites globally, I hope you have a day of comfort and hope. Thank you. Okay. Michelle, you can stop recording. Okay.